Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not to a royal court or a battlefield, but to a different kind of historical space, one often whispered about, sometimes vilified, and almost never fully understood. We're going to spend a day in the life of a medieval prostitute. And let me be clear, this isn't some fairy tale. The world you're about to enter is gritty, complicated, and a place where you, as a woman, probably wouldn't survive to see your 30th birthday. It's a world of surprising camaraderie, harsh realities, and a form of intimacy that was as much a transaction as it was a human connection. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you are in the comments and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's a dense, heavy perfume of cheap rosewater and stale wine, clinging to the thick woolen blankets you're wrapped in. The air is cool, carrying the faint, distant scent of wood smoke and the sharp, earthy tang of the latrine. You're lying on a straw-filled mattress that rustles and shifts beneath you with every small movement. The bed frame is sturdy, but well-worn, its dark wood polished smooth by countless hands and bodies. The room itself is small and functional, a tiny cell of a space with a single, shuttered window that lets in only a sliver of morning light. On a small wooden stool beside your bed sits a cracked clay jug of water and a bowl of yesterday's gruel, untouched. Your body aches. It's a deep, pervasive weariness that has settled into your bones, a constant companion that greets you every morning. The ache is a testament to the night before, a long, relentless cycle of men, each with his own needs and expectations. Some were gentle, some were rough, but all of them were a part of the job. You slowly, reluctantly, push yourself up, the straw rustling louder now as you move. A yawn escapes you, and you can almost taste the fatigue in the back of your throat. This is a life of physical and emotional endurance, and the day has barely even begun. As you sit on the edge of the bed, you can hear the muffled sounds of the brothel stirring to life. The creak of floorboards above, a low murmur of voices from down the hall, the clatter of a pot being set on a fire. This is your home, a bustling, chaotic microcosm of the city itself. You're one of many women here, all of you bound together by the same fate, the same shared experiences. You're part of a family of sorts, a strange, unconventional sorority where the bonds are forged not just in shared work, but in shared hardship and the need for survival. The term prostitute might make you think of a lonely, isolated figure, but for many women, the medieval brothel was a place of community. It was a place where they found allies, confidants, and even a kind of sisterhood. In fact, historians still argue about whether these brothels were primarily places of exploitation or, in some cases, surprisingly structured communities that offered women a measure of protection and stability in a volatile world. You stand up, your bare feet meeting the cold, hard-packed earth floor. A shiver runs through you. There's a small, tarnished copper mirror hanging on the wall. You walk over to it, your reflection staring back at you. Your eyes are tired, your hair a tangled mess, and there's a small bruise on your arm you don't remember getting. You remember a joke you heard one of the other girls make, something about how men prefer a woman with a lived-in look. It's a dark humor that helps you all get through the day. Another quirk of this profession, and something you'll come to see often, is the rare but present sense of romance and intimacy that isn't just about the physical act. Sometimes, a man would come to you not for a quick release, but for a moment of quiet connection, a listening ear, a gentle touch that had nothing to do with lust. These moments are rare, precious islands in an ocean of transactional encounters. You think of one man, a blacksmith, who would come just to talk about his work, the stress of the forge, the weight of his tools. He'd pay you, of course, but it was the conversation that he seemed to truly value. It was a different kind of physical interaction, a different kind of romance, one built on a brief, fragile trust. He didn't want your body, he wanted your presence. And you, in turn, found yourself listening, truly listening, to his story. The reality of your profession is that it's a job, a trade like any other. It's a means of survival in a society that offers you few other options. A mainstream historical fact is that in many medieval cities, prostitution was not just tolerated but was actually regulated and taxed by the city authorities. They saw it as a necessary evil, a way to control the sexual urges of men and, importantly, a source of income for the city coffers. You, as a working woman, are a walking, talking tax stream. Your body, your time, and your services are all, in a sense, property of the state. You grab the clay jug and pour a small amount of water into your hands, splashing it onto your face. The cold water is a shock to your system, a sharp slap of reality that washes away some of the sleepiness. You run your fingers through your hair, trying to untangle the knots. It's a futile effort, but it's a start. This is the beginning of your day, a day that will be a repeat of the one before it, and the one before that. But within this repetition, you find small, unexpected moments of humanity. It's in the shared laugh with another girl in the hall, the quiet conversations with a lonely client, the momentary escape in a dream as you finally drift off to sleep. And it is in these moments, however fleeting, that you find the strength to face another sunrise and another day. The door to your room opens, and the madam, a large woman with a perpetually stern expression, stands in the doorway. "Up, girl," she says, her voice a low rumble. "Breakfast is waiting." You stand up, a familiar sense of dread and resignation settling in your gut. This is it. The day has officially begun. You're not a queen or a peasant, a wife or a mother. You are a woman of the red light district, and your life is a complex tapestry of survival, intimacy, and a kind of fierce resilience that a lot of people just wouldn't believe. You step out of your room, the air in the hallway thick with the smells of other people and other lives, and you follow the madam to the common room, to the start of another day. The common room is a hive of activity, a blur of motion and sound. The air is thick with the aroma of brewing barley and simmering beans, a welcome change from the stale air of your own room. Women move around with a practiced grace, their movements a dance of long familiarity. Some are already dressed for the day, their linen shifts clean and their hair braided, while others, like you, are still in the raw, sleepy stages of morning. You find a spot at one of the long, rough-hewn wooden tables and sit, taking a moment to just exist before the day's demands begin. This is a brief, peaceful interlude, a small pocket of normalcy in a life that is anything but. Your morning ritual, when you have a moment to yourself, is a simple but important one. It's not about vanity, not really. It's about practicality, about preparing your body and your mind for the work ahead. First, you need to attend to your hygiene. You remember what the madam said when you first arrived, a harsh but undeniable truth: a clean girl is a working girl. You grab a small, coarse cloth and a sliver of lye soap from a communal basin near the hearth. The soap is harsh, but it's effective. You wash your face, your hands, and your arms, scrubbing away the grime and the lingering traces of the night before. This act of washing is a small, quiet rebellion against the dirt and the disease that are constant threats. It's a way of reclaiming your body, of making it your own, if only for a few moments. After washing, you turn your attention to your hair. It's a tangle of knots and loose strands from sleeping, and you begin to meticulously comb it out with a small bone comb, a precious possession you guard jealously. You pull it back from your face and braid it tightly, a practical style that keeps it out of the way. It's a small, feminine act that reminds you of who you are, or at least who you used to be, before this life claimed you. You're not just a body for hire, you're a person with a history, with memories, with a life that existed before the red light district. You can't help but remember a time when a different man, a young farmer, braided your hair for you, his rough hands surprisingly gentle. That was a different kind of romance entirely, one of shared futures and simple dreams that are now long gone. The preparation isn't just physical, it's emotional, too. You have to steel yourself for what's to come. You know that today, like every day, will bring a mix of men. There will be the young apprentices, nervous and fumbling, and the wealthy merchants, demanding and particular. There will be the soldiers, rowdy and aggressive, and the lonely old men, who just want a hand to hold and someone to listen. Each man requires a different version of you, a different persona you must wear like a second skin. It's an exhausting performance, a constant act of emotional labor. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of emotional and physical exhaustion led to incredibly high turnover rates in the profession. The average working life of a medieval prostitute was shockingly short, often just a few years before they were too ill, too tired, or simply too old to continue. You finish your preparations by putting on a simple linen shift, the only garment you own that is truly yours, not provided by the madam. It's a small piece of autonomy. Over that, you'll wear a dress from the communal wardrobe, a dress that belongs to no one and everyone. You make sure the shift is clean, and you quickly check it for any holes or tears. It's a simple garment, but it is your one personal possession. You remember a quirky tidbit you overheard from a traveling merchant. He said that in some parts of Italy, prostitutes were required by law to wear a specific type of clothing, often with a yellow stripe, to make them easily identifiable. You wonder if that would be better or worse than the constant, subtle judgment you face every day. At least then, there would be no doubt. It would be an honest, if painful, signal. As you finish getting dressed, you hear the other women talking. They're discussing the madam's temper, the price of bread in the market, a new shipment of French wine. It's a normal conversation, the kind you might overhear in any tavern or market, and you realize that's what's so strange about this life. It's both completely ordinary and utterly extraordinary at the same time. You're a part of a community, and yet, you are fundamentally separated from the rest of the world. You have your own rules, your own language, your own way of life. Historians still argue whether the brothel was a place of total subjugation or if the women found ways to exert some level of control over their lives and work. You think about the little rebellions you and the other girls have, the way you secretly hide a little extra bread from breakfast, or the way you band together to refuse a particularly rough or dangerous client. These small acts of defiance are not enough to change your life, but they are enough to remind you that you are not just a commodity. You are a person. The madam re-enters the room, her voice cutting through the chatter. All right, girls. The day is here. No time for lollygagging. Eat your fill, and then get ready. The men will be here soon. You look around the room, at the tired but resilient faces of the women around you. You're a family, a strange and difficult family, but a family nonetheless. You take a deep breath, and you prepare yourself. The day is here. The performance is about to begin. You grab a slice of stale bread and a cup of watered-down ale, and you sit down to breakfast, knowing that this small moment of peace is about to end. The physical preparation is done, but the emotional preparation is an ongoing process, one that never truly ends. It's a constant effort to keep your head above water, to keep your soul from drowning in the work that defines your every waking moment. The ale is thin and bitter, but you drink it anyway. It's fuel. And you're going to need all the fuel you can get. Breakfast is a communal affair, a noisy, chaotic tapestry of sounds and smells. You sit at the long wooden table, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke, stale beer, and the steaming porridge that fills a large iron pot at the center of the room. The porridge is a thin, watery gruel, but it's warm and it fills your stomach. You eat in relative silence, listening to the chatter of the other women. There's a girl named Ilara, a newcomer with wide, frightened eyes, who's talking to another girl named Beatrice, a veteran who has been here for years and whose face is a roadmap of a hard life. Beatrice is giving her advice, her voice low and gruff. "Don't let M touch your hair, girl," she says, her tone more protective than harsh. "They pull on it, and it hurts like the devil. You tell M no, and you tell M you'll take a switch to M if they don't listen." This is the kind of advice you don't get in any other profession, a kind of dark wisdom passed down from one woman to another. The brothel's social hierarchy is subtle but very real, a kind of pecking order that you learned quickly. At the top is the madam, of course, the iron fist that rules this small kingdom. She's a woman who has seen it all, a survivor who carved out a place for herself in a world that would rather see her broken. She controls the money, the food, and the clients, and her word is law. Beneath her are the older girls, the veterans who have been here the longest. They get the better rooms, the first pick of the meals, and the more lucrative, less dangerous clients. You're somewhere in the middle, still new enough to be treated with a certain level of suspicion, but old enough to know the ropes and to not be pushed around. At the very bottom are the new girls, the ones like Ilara, who are still shell-shocked and vulnerable. They are the ones most at risk, most in need of the quiet protection that the older women provide. It's a strange, brutal kind of sisterhood, but it's a sisterhood all the same. A quirky tidbit that you find both fascinating and horrifying is the way some of the older girls talk about the men they see. It's not always in hushed tones of complaint or disgust. Sometimes, there's a strange, almost wistful sense of intimacy. One of the women, a fiery redhead named Isolde, once told you about a client who would only come to her to read from a tattered old book of poetry. He never touched her, never even asked for anything physical. He would simply sit on the edge of her bed and read to her for hours, a brief escape from his lonely life and a strange, poetic form of romance. Isolde would listen, her eyes closed, pretending for a moment that she was a lady of the court, being serenaded by a handsome prince. It was a kind of physical interaction, too, in a way. The simple act of sharing a space, a story, a moment of fragile humanity. Historians still argue about the true nature of these intimate relationships. Were they truly intimate, or were they just another form of transaction, a different kind of payment for a different kind of service? It's a question without a clear answer, and it's one you find yourself pondering as you eat your breakfast. A mainstream historical fact about medieval brothels is that they were often located just outside the city walls, in a designated red light district. This was done for several reasons. It allowed the city authorities to keep a close eye on them, to regulate their activities, and to collect their taxes. It also kept them separate from the respectable citizens of the city, a way of maintaining a rigid social order. You are a part of that district, a resident of the place where the city ends and the wild, untamed world of human desire begins. You are a necessary part of the city, but you are not truly a part of it. You exist on the margins, in the shadows, and in the spaces that no one else wants to claim. As you finish your porridge, the madam claps her hands together, a sharp, authoritative sound that silences the room. "All right, ladies, enough chit-chat. The doors open in an hour. Get ready. Clean yourselves. Look presentable. I want you all to look like what you are, the finest in the district. No lollygagging." The word lollygagging seems to be her favorite, a word she uses for everything from sitting too long to not smiling at a client. You quickly stand up, grabbing your empty bowl and placing it in a large wooden basin filled with cold water. You look around the room one last time, at the faces of the women who are your only family in this world. There is a quiet strength in their eyes, a shared knowledge that this is a difficult life, but it is their life. And they will face it, day after day, until they can no longer. You nod to Beatrice and Alara as you leave the common room, and you head back to your own small cell to put on your dress and your best face, your armor for the day. The first client of the day arrives with the sound of a heavy knock on your door. He's not a lord or a knight, not some grand figure out of a storybook. He's a tanner, you can tell by the faint, acrid smell of his trade that clings to his rough woolen tunic. His name, he tells you, is Thomas, and his hands are stained with the residue of his work, cracked and calloused from years of scraping hides. He's not a handsome man, his face a landscape of pockmarks and sun-weathered wrinkles, but there's a quiet desperation in his eyes that you recognize immediately. This isn't a man seeking pleasure so much as he's a man seeking escape. He's here for a brief, fleeting moment of human connection in a life of hard, monotonous labor. You greet him with a practiced smile, one that doesn't quite reach your eyes, and invite him in. Your room, which felt so private and safe just an hour ago, now becomes a stage. He sits on the edge of your bed, his shoulders hunched, and for a long moment, he just stares at the floor. You don't rush him. You've learned that patience is a vital part of this job. Rushing a man is a sure way to make him feel ashamed, and shame is an emotion that can turn a quiet man into an aggressive one. You simply sit beside him, your hands folded in your lap, and wait. When he finally speaks, his voice is a low rumble, almost a whisper. "My wife," he says, his gaze still fixed on the floor. "She's sick. I can't be with her." It's a common story. Wives with lingering illnesses, pregnancies gone wrong, or just the simple exhaustion of a life of childbirth and drudgery. His romantic and physical life has been put on hold, and he needs a release, an outlet that his world cannot provide. This is the truth behind a lot of the men who visit. They aren't villains or perverts. They are just men, struggling with their own lives, their own loneliness. They come to you not for love, but for a simulation of it. They come for the illusion of romance, for a moment where they can pretend to be desired, to be wanted, to be seen as more than just a tanner, a blacksmith, or a baker. A mainstream historical fact is that for many men in the Middle Ages, marriage was not a union of love but a strategic alliance for land, money, or social standing. This often left a void of emotional and physical intimacy that brothels and prostitutes were expected to fill. You, in a way, are a social safety valve, a necessary part of the city's plumbing. You provide a service that allows the rigid, hierarchical world outside your doors to function. You give men a place to go where they can be vulnerable, where they can be seen without judgment, where they can be human for a brief, stolen moment. Thomas finally looks at you, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and relief. "Just talk to me for a bit," he says, his voice a little stronger now. "Tell me something. Anything." And so you do. You tell him about the small things in your life, the cat that lives in the brothel's courtyard, the new song a traveling minstrel was singing, the surprisingly good bread you had for breakfast. You tell him the kinds of things you tell a friend, a sister, a lover. You're not lying, but you're not telling the whole truth either. You're giving him a sanitized version of your life, a version that he can hold in his mind without being overwhelmed by the harsh reality. You're creating a moment of romance, a manufactured intimacy that is both real and fake at the same time. As you talk, he slowly begins to relax. He starts to talk, too, telling you about his work, about the different kinds of leather he works with, about the satisfaction of making a quality product with his own two hands. You listen, truly listen, nodding and asking questions. It's an unspoken agreement between you, a silent contract. He's paying you for this conversation, for this moment of connection, just as much as he's paying you for the physical part of the encounter. This is a different type of physical interaction, one that starts with words and ends with a fleeting, transactional intimacy. It's a job of the mind as much as it is of the body. You think of a quirky tidbit you once heard about a brothel in Paris where the women were required to be able to read and write, so they could entertain their clients with stories and conversation. It makes you feel a certain kind of kinship with those women, a sense of shared purpose across the miles. Historians still argue whether these emotional connections were a form of psychological manipulation on the part of the prostitutes or genuine moments of human empathy. For you, it's a little of both. You are empathetic to his plight. You understand his loneliness. But you are also using that empathy, that understanding, to do your job. It's a delicate balancing act, a tightrope you walk every single day. When the time comes, the physical part of the transaction is quick and quiet. He is gentle, almost apologetic, and when he is done, he lies beside you for a long moment, his eyes closed. He doesn't say anything, but you can feel the quiet gratitude emanating from him. He leaves a few coins on the nightstand, more than the usual fee, and he walks out of your room, his shoulders a little straighter, his step a little lighter. You lie there for a moment after he's gone, the faint smell of his trade lingering in the air, and you know you've done your job. You've given him what he needed, and in a small, almost imperceptible way, you've also given a little bit of yourself. You get up, tidy the room, and wait for the next knock. The hours between the morning rush and the evening crowds are a strange kind of purgatory. The brothel settles into a quiet hum, a rhythm of domesticity that feels almost normal. This is your downtime, a brief and precious respite from the constant demands of your job. You spend this time with the other women, gathered in the common room or in one of the larger, empty bedrooms. The mood is different now, the practiced smiles are gone, the performative charm replaced by a quiet, weary intimacy. This is where the real bonds of your sorority are forged, in the shared space of a brothel on a quiet afternoon. You and Isolde are sitting together, mending a tear in one of your shifts with a needle and thread she's borrowed from the madam's mending basket. The silence is comfortable, punctuated by the soft scratching of the needle against the linen and the low murmur of other women's conversations. A girl named Agnes is braiding another girl's hair, her fingers moving with a practiced ease. They're talking about the men they saw last night, not in a professional way, but in a personal, often darkly humorous one. That last one, Agnes says, her voice a low laugh, he kept telling me he was a poet. All he did was snore. The other women laugh, a sound that is both genuine and tinged with a heavy dose of weariness. This is how you all cope, with gallows humor and shared stories. It's a way of reclaiming your dignity, of turning the men you see into characters in a story, rather than just faceless demands on your body. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of emotional support was vital for the women working in these brothels. The psychological toll of the profession was immense, and without a strong network of other women, many would have succumbed to despair or madness. The brothel, for all its dangers and exploitation, could also be a place of refuge from the even harsher world outside. You are a family, not by blood, but by circumstance. You look out for each other. You share secrets, frustrations, and small moments of joy. You warn each other about particularly rough clients, and you band together to refuse service to men who are known to be violent. It's a system of self-preservation, a silent, unspoken contract between all of you. You remember a quirky tidbit you once heard about a particular type of romance that existed in some of the more upscale brothels. A client would sometimes become a patron of a specific woman, not just paying for her time, but providing her with gifts, clothing, and even a small allowance. This was a different kind of relationship, one that bordered on a kept woman and a form of companionship that blurred the lines between transaction and affection. It was a rare and coveted position, a way for a woman to find a measure of security and, if she was lucky, a true partner in an otherwise unforgiving world. Historians still argue whether these relationships were a form of empowerment for the women involved or just a more subtle and gilded cage. You look at Isolde, her face a mask of weary concentration as she works the needle, and you wonder if she has ever had a patron. You wonder what that kind of life would be like, a life with a little less fear and a little more stability. As the sun begins to set, the mood shifts again. The quiet, domestic peace gives way to a low, nervous energy. The preparations begin for the evening rush. The madam comes through the room, her eyes sharp, inspecting each of you. She wants you all to look your best, to be ready for the men who will start to arrive as the shops close and the taverns open. This is the busiest time, the most profitable time, and the most dangerous time. You finish mending your shift, tie off the thread, and hand the needle back to Isolde. She gives you a small, tired smile. "Another night," she says, a statement, not a question. You nod. Another night. The emotional and physical toll of your profession is a constant weight on your shoulders, a burden that never truly goes away. The morning and afternoon downtime are not just about rest, they're about gathering your strength, about preparing your mind and body for the brutal, beautiful, and often heartbreaking work that lies ahead. The communal life of the brothel, with all its complexities, is what allows you to endure. You are not alone. And in a world that can be so lonely, that is a kind of salvation. You and Isolde stand up, ready to face the night, your brief moment of peace over. Now that the evening is beginning, and the brothel is slowly coming back to life, it's a good time to talk about the part of this world that nobody really likes to think about, the money. It's the engine that drives this entire operation, the cold, hard reality that underpins every transaction, every interaction. The business side of the brothel is a surprisingly structured and regulated affair, a mirror of the very society that tries so hard to pretend it doesn't exist. Your work, like the work of any craftsman or laborer, is a part of the city's economy. And like any worker, a significant portion of your earnings doesn't end up in your pocket. Let's be honest, you're not an independent contractor. You're an employee, and a highly controlled one at that. The brothel owner, the madam, takes a substantial cut of everything you earn. Historians still argue about the exact percentage, but it was often a half or more, sometimes even as much as 3/4 of your earnings. This isn't just about greed, it's about control. The madam provides the room, the food, the protection, and the clients. She's your landlord, your boss, your bouncer, and your banker all rolled into one. Her cut isn't just for her profit, it's for the running of the brothel, for the food you eat, the ale you drink, and the bed you sleep in. You are in a state of perpetual debt to her, a system designed to keep you beholden to her and to the brothel. It's a very clever, and very brutal, business model. A mainstream historical fact is that in many medieval cities, prostitution was a state-run or state-regulated enterprise. The city authorities, far from trying to shut down the brothels, saw them as a valuable source of income. They levied taxes on the brothels, and sometimes even licensed the women themselves. You, as a working woman, are a walking, talking tax stream. You are a part of the city's coffers, a contributor to the public good, whether you like it or not. The city of Avignon, for example, had a city-run brothel, where the women were given a regular wage and had their health checked by a city-appointed doctor. This was an attempt to both control the industry and profit from it, a classic case of the government having its cake and eating it too. There's a quirky tidbit you often think about, a small piece of information that makes you smile despite yourself. You heard from a traveling merchant once that in some parts of Italy, the city officials would tax the prostitutes based on the number of beds in the brothel. This led to a kind of competition among the brothels, a race to have the most beds, to be the most profitable. The madam of this brothel, she often boasts about her number of beds, as if it's a sign of her success, her dominance in the district. It's a strange thing to be proud of, but in this world, it's a measure of power. Your own personal finances are a precarious thing. You get to keep a small portion of what you earn, and you can use it to buy small luxuries, a new ribbon for your hair, a piece of bread from the baker instead of the madam's gruel, a small trinket from a street vendor. But your savings, if you have any, are almost always held by the madam, a practice that is, of course, for your own protection. In reality, it's just another way to keep you tied to the brothel. Historians still argue about whether this practice was genuinely intended to protect the women from theft or if it was just another tool of control, a way to prevent them from ever having enough money to leave. You know in your heart it's the latter. This is a business, and you are a part of its inventory. You can't leave if you have no money. You can't start a new life if you have nothing to start it with. You are here to stay, until you're too old or too sick to be of any use. As the first of the evening clients starts to arrive, the sound of the bell on the front door signaling a new arrival, you can hear the madam's booming voice from the common room, her tone a mix of command and cheer. "Welcome, gentlemen. Step right in. The fire is warm, the ale is fresh, and the girls are ready to greet you." It's a performance, of course, a carefully crafted piece of theater designed to lure men in and separate them from their coin. You take a deep breath, and you straighten your dress, the cheap wool scratching against your skin. The business is about to begin in earnest. And you are a part of it, for better or for worse. The evening is a blur of faces and voices, a constant stream of men moving in and out of your small room. But between the clients, there are brief, stolen moments of quiet, and in one of these moments, the madam comes to you with a surprising offer. "The baker's wife is having a baby," she says, her voice unusually soft. "Her sister needs help with the errands. You're quick on your feet. Go to the market for her." A rare chance to see the city in the evening. This isn't a gesture of kindness, it's a practical choice. She knows that a healthy, happy prostitute is a profitable prostitute, and a little fresh air can work wonders. And besides, she knows you won't run. You have nowhere to go. You have no money. You have no family to return to. The madam hands you a small leather pouch filled with coins, a detailed list of items, and a sense of a freedom that feels both exhilarating and terrifying. Stepping out of the brothel and into the city is like stepping into a different world entirely. The air is crisp and cool, a welcome change from the heavy, stale air of your room. The streets are bustling with people, merchants closing their shops, families walking home, children playing in the last of the daylight. You pull the hood of your cloak up, a simple garment provided by the madam to keep you from being instantly recognizable. You are a ghost, an observer, and you're seeing your city from a new perspective, one that you are normally barred from. You walk with a purpose, your eyes taking in everything. You see the rich merchants, their clothes made of fine silks and wools, their faces well-fed and clean. You see the apprentices, their hands calloused from their trades, their faces young and full of hope. You see the women, dressed in simple, practical clothes, their faces tired but content as they shepherd their children home. This is the world you once belonged to, the world that cast you out. And as you walk, you can feel the rigid social classes of the medieval city, a structure as real and as solid as the stone walls that surround the city. You, in this moment, are neither a part of the brothel nor a part of the city. You are a traveler between worlds, a fleeting shadow in the evening light. The market is a chaotic symphony of sounds and smells. The shouts of vendors hawking their wares, the scent of fresh bread and roasted meat, the heavy perfume of spices from the east. You make your way through the crowd, clutching the leather pouch in your hand, your eyes scanning the list. You need flour from the baker, salt pork from the butcher, and some fresh greens from the farmer. You find the baker's stall first, a warm, fragrant oasis in the middle of the market. The baker, a large, jolly man, recognizes you from the madam's errands. "Ah, the brothel girl," he says, his voice a low chuckle. "How's the madam doing? Running you ragged, is she?" You force a small, polite smile and simply give him the coin and the list. He doesn't treat you with disgust, but with a kind of casual, knowing familiarity that feels almost worse. You are a part of his world, a fixture of the city, but you are a fixture he would never invite into his home. You remember a quirky tidbit you once overheard about the various guilds of the city. The tanners, the blacksmiths, the bakers, they all had a powerful hold on their respective trades, a kind of monopoly that protected their members and kept outsiders out. Prostitutes, on the other hand, had no such guild. You have no protection, no union, no one to fight for your rights. You are a lone wolf in a world of packs. This lack of a guild meant that you were completely at the mercy of the madam and the city authorities. You had no one to turn to, no one to advocate for you. It was a cruel and clever system of control. A mainstream historical fact is that this strict class and guild system was a defining feature of medieval society. Your profession, while tolerated and even taxed, was outside of this system. It was a liminal space, a world that existed but was not truly a part of the city's social fabric. Historians still argue about whether this marginalization was a form of deliberate social control or a natural consequence of a profession that didn't fit into the traditional guild structure. As you walk through the market, you feel that marginalization acutely. You are here, you are a part of the city, but you are not truly of the city. You are a visitor in a place that should be your home. You finish your errands, the leather pouch now lighter, and the market bag heavy with the baker's wife's groceries. You make your way back to the brothel, the city lights beginning to flicker on, the air growing colder. As you approach the familiar red light district, you can feel the weight of your life settling back onto your shoulders. The freedom of the market is gone, replaced by the heavy, familiar reality of your profession. You return to the brothel, a feeling of both relief and resignation washing over you. You are back home, a home that is both a prison and a sanctuary. Walking back to the brothel with the baker's wife's groceries in hand, you can feel the shift in the city's attitude towards you. Out in the market, you were just a girl running an errand, a fleeting shadow in the crowd. Here, on the outskirts of the city, you are what you are, a woman of the red light district. The glances you get are different now. They're longer, more knowing. Some are filled with contempt, a sharp, bitter look that makes you want to pull your cloak tighter around you. Others are filled with a kind of predatory curiosity, a look that makes your skin crawl. You can feel the public judgment, a heavy cloak that settles on your shoulders, and you realize that a simple change of scenery doesn't change who you are in the eyes of the world. The public's view of your profession is a mess of contradictions, a hypocrisy that is as old as the city itself. On the one hand, prostitution is seen as a necessary evil, a way to keep the city's respectable women safe from the sexual urges of men. On the other hand, the women who practice it are seen as sinners, as morally corrupt, as the very embodiment of the city's depravity. It's a lose-lose situation, a paradox that you have to live with every single day. A mainstream historical fact is that this contradictory view was a common theme throughout the Middle Ages. Prostitutes were often both a part of the city's social fabric and, at the same time, its outcasts. They were tolerated and regulated, but they were never truly accepted. As you walk past a group of men gathered outside a tavern, one of them lets out a low whistle and makes a crude comment. You don't react. You've learned that reacting only makes it worse. You just keep walking, your head down, your pace steady. You are a ghost, a shadow, an object of desire and disgust all at once. You think of a quirky tidbit you once heard from a client, a scholar who was doing research on city laws. He told you that in some cities, prostitutes were not allowed to wear certain types of clothing or jewelry, to prevent them from being mistaken for respectable women. This was an act of social engineering, a way to make sure that everyone knew their place. You, by law, were not allowed to aspire to a better life. You were to be a permanent resident of the margins, a scarlet letter branded onto your very identity. Historians still argue about whether this public condemnation was a genuine expression of moral outrage or a way for men to control and contain female sexuality. It's a chicken and egg question, a difficult knot to untangle. Did society condemn you because of your profession, or did your profession exist because society had already condemned you? As you walk, you feel the weight of this question, a question that has no easy answer. You are a product of your time, a woman born into a world that offered you few choices and even fewer protections. You finally reach the brothel, the familiar red light of its lantern a beacon in the gathering gloom. The sight of it fills you with a mix of relief and dread. It is a prison, but it is also a sanctuary. It is a place where you are judged, but it is also a place where you are understood. Inside, you are among your own kind. Outside, you are an anomaly, an outcast, a figure of scorn and desire. You hand the groceries to the madam, and she gives you a curt nod, her way of saying, "Job well done." You go back to your room, the brief, stolen freedom of your walk through the city now a distant memory. You are back in your cage, a cage that is both a blessing and a curse. You sit on the edge of your bed, the weight of the city's judgment still heavy on your shoulders, and you prepare for the evening rush, the endless cycle of men, and the strange, difficult, and often heartbreaking work that lies ahead. The contradictory world of the medieval city, a world of piety and depravity, of strict social order and chaotic desire, has once again claimed you as its own. As the sun dips below the city walls, painting the sky in a final, defiant splash of orange and purple, the brothel truly comes to life. This is the evening rush, the busiest and most chaotic time of day. The bell on the front door jingles with a near-constant frequency, each ring heralding a new face, a new story, a new demand on your time and your body. The air fills with a thick cloud of pipe smoke, the clatter of tankards, and the loud, boisterous laughter of men who have had a little too much ale. You are no longer a person, you are a commodity, a service, a fleeting moment of pleasure for a diverse cross-section of the city's male population. The clientele of the evening is a different breed from the men of the afternoon. While Thomas the Tanner came for a quiet moment of connection, these men are here for a different kind of release. The evening brings a mix of traveling merchants, flush with coin from a successful day of trading, rowdy soldiers, their minds dulled by a long day of drills and discipline, and young apprentices, fresh from their workshops, their pockets filled with a few precious coins they've managed to save. You greet each one with a practiced smile and a welcoming word, a performance you have honed over months, a second skin you wear with a weary grace. The romantic and physical interactions are different now, too. They're quicker, more transactional, less about conversation and more about the physical act itself. The men of the evening are not looking for a hand to hold, they are looking for a body to occupy. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of transactional intimacy was often the primary reason for a man to visit a brothel. It was a place where he could fulfill his physical urges without the complexities and social obligations of a courtship or a marriage. It was a space of pure, unadulterated pleasure, a necessary release in a society with strict moral codes and little room for personal freedom. You are, in a way, a part of that release, a part of that necessary evil that allows the rest of the city to function. You remember a quirky tidbit you once heard about the different types of brothels that existed in the city. There were the high-end, discreet houses for the wealthy merchants and nobles, and there were the cheaper, more public houses for the common man. You work in the middle, a place that caters to a diverse range of men, from the respectable to the rogue. Historians still argue about whether this social stratification was a result of economic forces or a deliberate attempt by the city to regulate different types of sexual behavior. You don't have an answer to that question. You only know that you see men from all walks of life, all of them united by the same basic human desires. One of the men you see tonight is a young apprentice, his face flushed with a mix of ale and nerves. He can't be more than 17, his hands still soft, not yet calloused by his trade. He's here with his friends, a group of boisterous young men who are daring him to go in. He pays you with a few small coins, his hands shaking slightly, and he just sits on the edge of your bed, staring at the floor. He doesn't know what to do, what to say. You take pity on him. You sit beside him, and you just talk to him. You ask him about his trade, about his master, about the dreams he has for his future. The physical interaction, when it finally happens, is quick and clumsy. But what he truly paid for, you realize, was the conversation, the brief, fleeting moment of human connection that made him feel like a man, not just an apprentice. He leaves with a look of gratitude and a sense of pride, a different kind of currency entirely. The evening continues, a relentless cycle of men and fleeting moments. You are a chameleon, changing your persona with each new face that comes through your door. For the traveling merchant, you are a clever conversationalist. For the soldier, you are a quiet, submissive listener. For the lonely old man, you are a gentle hand to hold. It is an exhausting performance, a constant act of emotional labor. You are a different kind of romantic and physical partner for each man, a mirror reflecting back their desires, their loneliness, their fears. You are a blank slate, a canvas on which they can paint their desires, and in doing so, you lose a little bit of yourself with each new stroke. As the night wears on, you can feel your energy draining, your smile becoming a little more forced, your movements a little more sluggish. But you have to keep going. The money you make tonight will feed you tomorrow. And that is the simple, brutal reality of your life. The evening is a blur, a rhythmic cycle of men and money. But then, a man walks into your room who is different. You can tell immediately. He's not a merchant, not a soldier, and not an apprentice. He's a scholar, you can tell by the way he carries himself, the quiet confidence in his eyes, and the small, leather-bound book he holds in his hand. He's older, his hair a mix of grey and brown, and his face is a map of deep lines, not from hardship, but from thought and contemplation. He doesn't say anything at first, just sits on the edge of your bed and looks around your room, his eyes taking in every detail as if he were studying a historical artifact. He is here not for a release, but for an experience. This is a different kind of romance, a different kind of physical and romantic interaction that is rare in this world. He finally speaks, his voice a low, melodic rumble. I've never been to a place like this before, he says, his gaze finally settling on you. I've studied it. I've read about it. But I've never experienced it. He tells you his name is Alaric, and he's a historian from a distant university, in town to study the city's archives. He's here, he says, not for a physical act, but for a story. He wants to know what your life is like, what you think, what you feel. He's here to understand a part of history that is often written out of the books he reads. You are wary at first. You've heard stories of men who feign interest in your life, only to use it as a tool for their own gratification. But there's a genuine curiosity in his eyes, a gentle respect that you haven't felt in a long time. You decide to take a chance. You tell him your story, not the sanitized version you tell the other men, but the real one. You tell him about the small village you came from, about your family, about the failed harvest that forced you to leave home. You tell him about the other women in the brothel, about their lives, their dreams, their fears. You tell him about the quiet moments of camaraderie, the harsh realities of the work, the constant fear of disease and violence. He listens, truly listens, his eyes never leaving yours. He asks questions, not prying ones, but questions that show a genuine desire to understand. He asks you about the economy of the brothel, about the madam, about the city's laws. He's not a client, he's a student, and you are his teacher. The physical interaction is almost non-existent. He pays you, of course, the coins a quiet acknowledgement of the transaction. But what he's truly paying for is your time, your story, your perspective. This is a different kind of romance, a different kind of physical connection that is more about the meeting of minds than the meeting of bodies. You are a source of information, a living piece of history. A quirky tidbit that he shares with you is that in some parts of the world, brothels were not just places of prostitution, but also centers of art and culture. In ancient Japan, for example, the geisha were not just courtesans, but accomplished artists, poets, and musicians. They were respected members of society, and their houses were places where men could go to be entertained and educated. Alaric muses that perhaps the women in this brothel, with their stories, their songs, and their shared wisdom, are a kind of forgotten part of that tradition. Historians still argue whether this is a romanticized view of a brutal profession or if there were genuine moments of art and culture that existed within the confines of the brothel. You, as you listen to him, feel a certain sense of pride. You are not just a prostitute, you are a storyteller, a living historian, a repository of a life that most people will never know. As the night wears on, you and Alaric talk for hours. He tells you about his life, about his research, about the men and women he studies in his books. You, in turn, tell him about yours. You are two people from two different worlds, brought together by a shared curiosity about the human condition. He is a man who studies history, and you are a woman who lives it. The emotional and intellectual connection between you is a different kind of physical interaction, a rare and precious form of romance that transcends the transactional nature of your profession. When he finally leaves, he gives you a small, respectful bow and a genuine thank you. He leaves behind not just a handful of coins, but a sense of dignity, a feeling that your life, in all its hardship, is a story worth telling. You sit on the edge of your bed after he's gone, the memory of his quiet respect a small flame of warmth in the cold darkness of your room, and you prepare for the next knock. The quiet moments between clients are rare, but they are also moments of a different kind of reality, a reality you're forced to confront every day, the dangers of the job. It's not just the emotional toll of the work, but the very real physical risks that come with it. You remember a girl who was here before you, a young woman named Marie, with bright, laughing eyes. She's gone now. She got too sick, a hacking cough that wouldn't go away, and the madam sent her away, afraid she would infect the other girls. You heard she died a few weeks later. This is the reality of your life, a constant dance with disease and death. The illnesses you face are not just the common ones that plague the city, but the ones that are a direct result of your work, the ones whispered about in the dark corners of the brothel. A mainstream historical fact is that sexually transmitted diseases were a rampant problem in the Middle Ages, with devastating consequences. Without any understanding of how these diseases spread or how to treat them, a simple fever could quickly turn into a death sentence. The brothel, with its constant turnover of men and the lack of sanitation, was a breeding ground for these illnesses. You, as a woman of the red light district, are a constant risk. You are a vessel for both pleasure and pestilence, and you know that your time is limited. Every cough, every ache, every strange rash is a quiet terror, a whisper of the end that you know is coming. The physical violence is another constant threat. While the madam does her best to keep the rowdier men in check, she can't be everywhere at once. You've had men who were too drunk, men who were too rough, men who were too angry at the world to be gentle with you. You've learned to read the signs, to anticipate the mood of a man before he even enters your room. You can tell by the way he walks, the way he talks, the look in his eyes. You have a system, a quiet warning system with the other girls. A cough in the hallway means, be careful. A dropped pot in the kitchen means, he's a brawler. It's a brutal kind of self-preservation, a silent language you all speak to keep each other safe. You remember the blacksmith, the man who just wanted to talk. His quiet gentleness was a rare kind of romance, a moment of peace that you now realize was also a moment of safety. Most men aren't like him. Most men are just looking for an outlet for their frustrations, and you are that outlet. Historians still argue about the true extent of the violence that women in this profession faced. Were the brothels truly places of refuge from the random violence of the streets, or were they just a different kind of cage, a place where the violence was more contained but no less real? You know the answer is both. The brothel is a place of protection from the outside world, but it is also a place where you are constantly at risk. The madam will protect you from a man who refuses to pay, but she will not always protect you from a man who is simply too rough. Your body is a part of her business, and she will protect her investment, but she will not always protect you. A quirky tidbit that you've heard is that in some of the more progressive cities, the city authorities would hire guards to patrol the red light district, to keep the women safe from the rowdier clients. You laugh at the thought. The only guard you have is yourself, your own wits, your own strength. You are your own protector, your own defender. And you know that one day, your strength will run out, your wit will fail, and you will be just another name on a long list of women who came and went, a ghost in the annals of a forgotten city. The fear of unwanted pregnancy is another constant weight on your mind. You know of a woman who had a child, and the madam took it away, sending it to an orphanage. The child was a liability, a drain on the brothel's resources. The woman was never the same again, her eyes haunted by a grief that no amount of ale or laughter could erase. This is a cruel kind of fate, a different kind of death. And you know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that you cannot afford to have a child. You do what you can to prevent it, using folk remedies and whispered secrets, but you know that nothing is foolproof. You are a part of a brutal, unforgiving cycle of life and death, and you are just another cog in the machine. Between the dangers and the drudgery, a thought often creeps into your mind, a dangerous and enticing whisper: what if you could leave? What would that be like? A glimpse of another life is a cruel kind of torture, a brief flash of a world that is no longer yours. You remember the freedom of walking through the market, the simple joy of being a ghost in a crowd. But that freedom was an illusion. The reality is that leaving is almost impossible. The world outside the brothel is not a welcoming one for a woman like you. The options are few, and none of them are good. You can't just walk away and start a new life. Your past is a brand on your forehead, a mark that the world will never let you forget. A mainstream historical fact is that for women who managed to leave the profession, their social and economic opportunities were almost non-existent. You would not be able to get a job in a respectable trade. You would not be able to marry a decent man. You would be a pariah, a permanent outsider. The very city that taxed you and profited from your work would also be the one to condemn you and turn its back on you. The doors of polite society are, and always will be, closed to you. You think of the other women in the brothel, the ones who have been here for years. They've given up on the idea of leaving, their dreams of a new life long since extinguished. They've found a kind of grim peace in their reality, a quiet acceptance of a fate they cannot change. You wonder if that will be you one day, a woman with a face as hard and a heart as closed as theirs. You remember a quirky tidbit you once heard, a story about a woman who managed to leave the profession and become a successful brewer. She was a legend, a folk hero in a world that had no place for heroes like her. She was the exception that proved the rule, a rare and beautiful flower that grew in the cracks of a concrete wall. You wonder if you could be that exception, that one woman in 1,000 who manages to escape. Historians still argue about whether the brothels of the Middle Ages were a form of social containment, a way to keep unruly women in their place, or if they were, in some cases, a kind of temporary sanctuary for women who had nowhere else to go. You know, it is a bit of both. The brothel is a prison, but it is also a place that offers a kind of twisted protection. It is a place where you can earn a living, where you can find a kind of community, and where you are, in a strange way, understood. The world outside is a cruel and unforgiving place, a place where you would be alone, friendless, and without any means of survival. The brothel, for all its evils, is a place that offers a semblance of order and stability in a chaotic world. You look around your small room, the familiar four walls that have been your home for so long. The bed, the stool, the jug of water. They are the artifacts of your life, the humble possessions of a woman who has no future and no past. Your life is here, in this room, in this brothel, in this red light district. The thought of leaving is a sweet, seductive lie, a fantasy that you cannot afford to indulge in. It is a distraction, a dangerous dream that could lead to your ruin. You have to be strong. You have to be practical. You have to accept your fate. The evening is in full swing now. The sounds of the brothel are a constant hum, a background noise that you have grown so used to that you barely even hear it anymore. You hear the madam's booming voice, the clatter of tankards, the laughter of the men. You hear the voices of the other women, their practiced greetings, their weary sighs. This is your world. This is your life. You take a deep breath, and you get up from the bed. There's another knock on the door, and the illusion of a different life disappears, replaced by the brutal, beautiful, and unforgiving reality of your own. As the night deepens, the energy of the brothel begins to wane. The boisterous laughter of the men gives way to a quiet murmur, the heavy footfalls to a weary shuffle. The clatter of the tankards fades into a dull clink, and the last of the pipe smoke drifts lazily towards the ceiling. This is the nightly close, the final act of a long and difficult performance. The men have had their fill of ale, of conversation, of physical intimacy, and they have all gone home, back to their wives, their families, their lives. You are left behind, with the other women, in the quiet, empty space of the brothel. You sit on the edge of your bed, your body heavy with fatigue, your mind a jumble of faces, of voices, of fleeting touches. You feel a strange sense of emptiness, a hollow space in your chest where you know your heart should be. You have been a different woman for each man tonight, a lover, a friend, a confidant, a blank slate. And now, you are just you, a woman sitting alone in a small room, with nothing but your thoughts for company. You start to tidy the room, a ritual you perform every night. You smooth the sheets, you sweep the floor, you wipe down the wooden stool. It is a way of cleaning not just the room, but your mind, of wiping away the memories of the night before you go to sleep. The other women are doing the same. You can hear them in their rooms, the soft swish of a broom, the quiet sound of a sigh. The madam, her work also done, is counting the night's earnings in the common room, the quiet clink of coins a final, brutal reminder of the transactional nature of your life. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of emotional and physical exhaustion was a common experience for women in your profession. The lack of sleep, the constant stress, and the relentless cycle of work would take a toll on both the body and the mind, leading to an incredibly short life expectancy. You, as you sit on your bed, can feel that toll in your bones, in the deep, bone-weary exhaustion that has become a constant companion. You think of the men who came tonight, the faces that blur in your memory. You remember the young apprentice, his face flushed with nerves, his hands shaking as he paid you. You remember the soldier, his body heavy with ale, his eyes haunted by a war he couldn't talk about. You remember Alaric, the scholar, his quiet respect, a small, fleeting moment of dignity in a world that offered so little of it. You wonder about them, about their lives, about the romantic and physical intimacy they have with their wives, the kind that isn't a transaction. You wonder if they ever think of you, a ghost in their memories, a fleeting moment of intimacy that they'll forget as soon as the sun rises. A quirky tidbit that you once heard is that some of the older women in the brothel would sometimes have a small, quiet ritual at the end of the night. They would light a small candle and say a prayer, not to a saint or to God, but to the women who had come before them. It was a way of honoring their memory, of acknowledging the shared burden of their lives. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine act of piety or a kind of dark superstition, a way of warding off the evil spirits of a profession that was often seen as sinful. You, as you blow out the small, sputtering candle you've been holding, decide that it doesn't matter. It is a ritual, a way of closing the day, and you find a kind of comfort in it. The brothel is quiet now. The sounds of the city have faded to a low hum. You can hear the rustling of the straw in your mattress as you lay down, pulling the heavy wool blanket up to your chin. The air is cold, but the blanket is warm. You close your eyes, and you try to empty your mind, to let go of the day, of the men, of the money. You try to find a small, quiet space in your mind where you can be just you, a woman with a past, a present, and a very uncertain future. Sleep is a kind of death, a temporary release from a life that is often too heavy to bear. And you, as you drift off to sleep, welcome that death with open arms. You lie in your bed, the darkness of the room a heavy blanket around you. The sounds of the brothel have faded, replaced by the soft rustling of the straw in your mattress and the quiet, steady rhythm of your own breathing. The day is over, but the night is a long and unforgiving time, a time for reflection and for fear. You contemplate your future, a future that you know is short and brutal. The life expectancy of a woman in your profession is not something anyone talks about, but it is a truth that hangs in the air, a sword of Damocles that you know is suspended over your head. You wonder what will happen when you are too old, too sick, or too worn out to work. The madam will not keep you. The brothel is a business, and you are just a part of its inventory. When you are no longer useful, you will be cast aside, thrown out into the streets to fend for yourself. You have seen it happen to other women, women who were once as young and as vibrant as you. They became beggars, their bodies ravaged by disease, their minds broken by a life of hardship. They were ghosts haunting the streets of the city, a quiet, brutal reminder of a future that awaits you. You think of the blacksmith, the man who wanted to talk. He saw you as a person, but Alaric, the scholar, saw you as a historical artifact. You wonder if you will one day be just a ghost in a history book, a footnote in a long and forgotten chapter. A mainstream historical fact is that this lack of a social safety net was a defining feature of medieval society. The elderly, the sick, and the poor were often left to fend for themselves, with only the charity of the church or the kindness of strangers to keep them alive. For a woman in your profession, who was already on the margins of society, this lack of a safety net was even more acute. You have no family to return to, no husband to care for you, no children to support you in your old age. You are alone, a solitary figure in a vast and indifferent world. You remember a quirky tidbit you once heard, a story about a brothel in Venice where the women were given a small pension when they retired, a kind of retirement fund that was meant to keep them from a life of destitution. It was a rare and beautiful gesture, a small act of humanity in a world of brutality. Historians still argue about whether this was a genuine act of kindness or a clever way for the brothel owners to keep the women from leaving before they were no longer useful. You, as you lie in the darkness, decide that it doesn't matter. It is a beautiful thought, a fleeting image of a world that is not your own. You are a woman of the red light district, a ghost in the annals of a long and brutal history. You have no future, no hope, no life beyond the four walls of this brothel. You are a product of your time, a woman born into a world that offered you no choices and no protections. You are a part of a brutal, unforgiving cycle of life and death, and you are just another cog in the machine. You think of Alaric, the scholar, and his quiet respect. He saw you as a story, a history, a person. You hold on to that thought, that one small moment of dignity, like a lifeline in a vast and stormy sea. You know it will not save you, but it will keep you from drowning in the bitterness of your own life. You close your eyes, and you try to find a small, quiet space in your mind where you can be just you, a woman with a past, a present, and a very uncertain future. Sleep is a kind of death, a temporary release from a life that is often too heavy to bear. And you, as you drift off to sleep, welcome that death with open arms. The last gasps of the day are gone. The brothel is silent now, a quiet tomb of tired bodies and weary souls. You're no longer thinking of clients or money or the madam. You're just there. The world outside, the city with its laws and its judgments, seems a million miles away. All that's left is the cool darkness of your room and the soft, rustling sound of the straw in your mattress. You pull the rough wool blanket up to your chin, its familiar weight a small comfort in the vast emptiness of the night. You close your eyes, and you let yourself fade. Sleep doesn't come easily, not at first. The day's memories play on a loop behind your eyelids, the smell of the tanner's trade, the nervous hands of the apprentice, the quiet respect of the scholar. Each face is a ghost, each voice a whisper in the dark. But slowly, the images soften, the whispers become a distant hum, and the frantic pace of the day begins to slow. The ache in your body starts to ease, the tension in your shoulders starts to release, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the soft embrace of the mattress. The sounds of the brothel fade into a gentle, rhythmic background noise, the creak of an old floorboard, the distant chirping of a cricket, the soft, steady breathing of the other women. This is the soundtrack of your life, a melody of shared hardship and quiet resilience. It's a lullaby that has become as familiar as the beating of your own heart. You are not alone, not truly. You are a part of a larger whole, a thread in a tapestry of women who have endured this life for centuries. And as you finally, truly, begin to drift away, you let the last of your worries go. The fear of tomorrow, the memory of yesterday, the harsh reality of today, they all dissolve into the soft, comforting darkness. There is only now. Only this moment. The world can wait. The city can wait. The brothel can wait. For now, there is just the peace of the end of the day, a quiet, gentle stillness that is all yours. You are safe. You are warm. You are at rest. And that, you realize, is enough. You whisper a final, soft, good night to the world and let yourself fall into the deep, welcoming silence of sleep.